Good morning, everyone. Morning. Today's a special day, a new member ceremony. And this morning, you know how sometimes something just jumps out at you? You planned what you wanted to say, but some other words come to mind. Well, I'm scrapping what I wrote for the opening words because there's something that just came to me that I want to share. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. There are so many things going on in the world right now where it doesn't feel like we're being our best selves. People's behavior is a little suspect. Some of the comments you've seen in the news, some of the ways that we're treating one another are not the most ideal. So I thought about sharing these words with you this morning.
Today we welcome new members into our congregation. We are delighted that these good people have chosen to join our religious community as we seek to honor the inherent worth of every person, to widen and deepen our own capacities as human beings, to strengthen one another in our ethical and spiritual growth, to support and sustain the community of this fellowship, to live out our beliefs as we make our world a better place. We celebrate the diversity of thought among us, and we know that each of us contributes to the life of the community in his or her own way. We ask your support for our common purpose and your willingness to share with us some of the richness of your life as we walk this path together.
Responsibility as well as a gift. Together we bring our enthusiasm and talents and join with you in the encouragement of spiritual.
At this very low. Is there any way this can come up? A stoop. Anyway, I'd like to invite our young folks to come forward. Come on, guys. I'm glad you're here. I have a story to tell you this morning. And before I start, though, I want to tell you that I think that this is a story about a couple of different things. But one of the things that it tells us is that when we try to be something that we're not, things don't go so well. But when we do the thing that we can do and we do it enthusiastically, then we find our place. And that's what this story tells about. Are you ready? It's called The Rooster Who Finally Learned to Crow. Enthusiasm, like with great excitement. Like you do it well and you do it hard and you do it like you mean it. That's a good question. Thank you. There was once a farm in a valley that was practically perfect in every single way, except it had no rooster. So there was no one to crow at the crack of dawn. And so everyone was always late getting out of bed. The dog never woke up in time to get the newspaper for the farmer. The farmer never woke up in time to milk the cows. And the cows never woke up in time to eat that grass that's still wet with the morning dew, because that's when it's the most tasty. Everyone was always late on that farm, and they were always walking around rubbing their eyes and cranky because they'd woken up too late. And sometimes that crankiness lasted all day, and it was terrible. Until one day a chicken arrived at the farm. Everyone was so excited because she had 4 little yellow balls of fluff trailing behind her. Pardon me, Mrs. Chicken, said the pig very politely. But would one of those little chicks that you've got there, oh, aren't they so cute, but is it possible maybe that one of them might be a boy? And Mrs. Chicken said that one of them was. She pointed with her tip of her wing to the last little ball of fluff in line and said, "That's my little son over there." And everyone started jumping up and down with excitement, and the lambs said, "A rooster chicken, a rooster chicken. We're not going to be late anymore. Finally, we're going to have a rooster." But they didn't. Not quite yet. You know, you have to wait for the chick to grow up, and that takes a little bit of time. But he did. All four of them did. They grew, and the little yellow balls of fluff became bigger yellow balls of fluff, and then the fluff rubbed off and feathers grew. And then finally one day, young Mr. Rooster Chicken began to grow his long tail feathers, and it was time. Now remember the pig, who's always very polite. He walked up to the rooster and he said, "You look very handsome today, young Mr. Rooster. You're a very fine-looking fowl, if I may say so." "Thank you," said Mr. Rooster with a bob of his head, and then he walked away. But his tail feathers were drooping as he walked away. And the gray and white cat, who was his friend, got worried and came up to him and said, "What's wrong?" "Oh, nothing." "Well, something must be wrong," said his buddy, the yellow duck who swam in the pond, and the pig came over because he was curious too. And they pushed the rooster until he finally admitted that he was terribly worried. "Well," he said, scratching around in the dirt, "everybody's waiting for me to grow up and learn to crow, and I'm doing the growing up part all right, but I don't know how to crow, and I don't know how to learn to crow, and I just don't know what to do." And the pig, who was helpful as well as polite, said that he was going to help. And he said, "We'll all help." And the cat said, "We will?" And the pig said, "Yes, of course you will. We're all going to get together and we're going to help our Mr. Rooster. We're going to teach him." "Mrs. Duck, have you ever heard a rooster crow before?" And she said that she had, and that she could show him. And so she flew up to the top of the chicken coop, and she folded her wings back, and she tilted her duck bill up, and she crowed. And this is what it sounded like. Quack, 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 quack. The cat crouched down and flattened his ears and tucked his tail down. And the pig said, "Thank you, Mrs. Duck. That was very nice of you, but I don't think that's quite what we're looking for." "I hope not," said the rooster. "I can't do that." "I'm going to demonstrate," said the pig. "First one must climb, though you will no doubt fly, to a high place." And so he trundled up to the top of his manure pile. Then you have to tilt your head back. And Mrs. Duck, she did that really well. But then you have to clear your throat like this, and then you have to crow, he said. And he tilted his head back, and he cleared his throat, and then he said, "Oink, oink, 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 oink." And the cat closed his eyes and shook his head. And the duck was not at all impressed. Yes, well, the pig climbed down from the manure pile. That is quite, it does sound, well, you understand, of course. I'm only doing the best never mind. You know, with a real rooster, it would be different. And the cat, who was shaking his head at this sad spectacle, said, "All right, I'm going to do my best here. I'll try to help." And he jumped up to the top of the fence, and he curled his tail around his toes, and he washed one paw, and then he looked up at the sky, and he crowed, and this is what it sounded like. "Meow, meow." "Humph," said the duck. "Well," said the pig. "Oh dear," said the rooster, and he started to look like he wanted to run away. And the rooster sadly shook his head, and he said, "I'm never going to learn to crow. I'm never going to be any good at this. This is nobody's going to want me here anymore. This is terrible." "Sure we want you," said the cat. "I like you right now, even without the crowing." And all the other animals agreed. "Besides," said the cat, "I don't want you waking me up. I like to sleep late anyway, so I'm fine." "I wonder," said the pig, thoughtfully, "have you ever just tried it? I mean, just go someplace quiet where nobody can see and just give it a go and see what happens." And this is how the rooster looked. He was like, well, you're more of a rooster than any of us could ever be, said the duck. And we're going to like you no matter how it comes out, said the pig. Even if you don't make any sound at all, that's fine, said the cat. At least you tried. And so the rooster decided to try. Right then and there, he was going to try. And so he flew up to the top of the chicken coop. He folded his wings back. He tilted his head up to the sky. And he tried to make all the same noises he'd heard from his friends. Except this is how it came out. You guys ready to do it with me? What happened when the rooster made noise? You ready? 1, 2, 3. Arr, 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 arr. And then very loud indeed, as he picked up speed, he crowed and he crowed and he crowed. And after that, no one had any doubt at all that young Mr. Rooster was going to be a fine rooster for the farm. And so now there's a farm in the valley that is practically perfect in every way. It even has a fine young rooster who crows at the crack of dawn so that everyone gets out of bed exactly on time, and the newspaper's always delivered when it should be, and the cows are always milked when they should be because they've eaten that first grass, the yummy grass that's wet with the dew. Everyone is always wide awake on that farm, and everybody's just a little bit more bright-eyed, except for the cat, who's not too happy about the situation, but he's learning to deal with himself. And everybody loves their Mr. Rooster, who's the best rooster that any farm could ever have. And that's our story.
I have a question for you. Why are you here this morning? Free coffee, okay. Fellowship, I'm with you, Gil. Coffee's always good. Maybe you were here last week, too. Why'd you come then? If you're a member of this fellowship, even a brand new member of this fellowship, why did you join? What does it mean to you to be not only a Unitarian Universalist, but to be a member of this particular Unitarian Universalist congregation? Too often in our society today, it's all about me. It's all about individual rights. The right to carry a gun, the right to speak my mind, the right to wear what I want, to do what I want, with no interference from you or anyone else. Me, me, me. We have a drought? Too bad. I want my lawn to be really green. So I'm going to water it 3 times a day, and you can't stop me. You say my music's too loud and you want me to turn it down? Too bad. I like it that way because it's all about me. Me, me, me. Some people would like to believe that that's true, that it's all about me, but in reality, it's not. As much as I want to be the Lone Ranger and do my own thing, my own way, that's not the way it works, particularly in this path that I've chosen. The UUA kind of has its own ideas about what my ministerial formation should look like, and I need to abide by those rules. Because the truth is that I and you, everyone, needs to belong to something. We need to feel that we belong to community. It's important for us to be part of community. So I'm guessing that most of you have heard of Abraham Maslow. In 1954, he published Motivation and Personality, in which he laid out 5 basic human needs. And I'm sure that he did many, many things in his life, but when you think about Maslow, you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's what we know. So how did he come to this? So he studied great minds, great people of the past. And they included Eleanor Roosevelt, Frederick Douglass, Albert Einstein. He looked at people who were successful in life and analyzed what they needed, what made them tick. You might think that he would have looked at people who were struggling, but instead, he specifically chose to look at those who were successful. And he realized that there was this pyramid, this kind of hierarchy, and at the bottom is physiological need. Everybody has a physiological need. There are things that you have to have in order to stay alive. Air. You got to breathe. Food. And water. And depending on how closely you read, sex. Because if we're not procreating, the human species stops. So to survive, sex is an important part of it. Next on the list, coming up the pyramid, are our safety needs. Think here of the need for protection from the elements, from danger, health safety, personal safety, financial safety, accident protection. Third on this list is the need for love and belonging. We need to be part of a group, to feel connected to other human beings. And let's finish them out. Next is esteem, the need to be recognized and respected. There are lots of people who go around blowing their own horn, saying, I'm so wonderful, I'm great, I'm fantastic. And I'm sure they get something out of it. But in reality, doesn't it feel better when it's coming from someone else? If it has to come from you, odds are you're feeling a little insecure. And that's okay. I mean, we're human. It happens. But we all have that need for esteem, to be valued, to feel as though we're contributing in some way. Like the little rooster who was afraid he was going to be kicked off the farm because he couldn't crow. And then lastly, there's self-actualization. This is the need to realize our full potential in life, the existential part of this. It's the need to excel in our chosen field or profession, to become maybe the ideal musician, or the ideal minister, or the ideal parent. Whatever it is, you just want to be the best. So today we're talking specifically about that need to belong. And you can see how it kind of fits into several of those categories, not just the one it occupies, but it bleeds over into the other two. Anthropologists tell us that this need to belong has its basis in evolution. Think of early man, the hunter-gatherer, who trapped and killed animals for food and for their hides. One hunter might be able to kill his prey, but a community of hunters working together were much more efficient. Once he realized that, early man worked together as a hunting team. They also divided up tasks among the males and the females in the group. Now, some of that carried forward in ways that maybe we didn't like so much in those gender roles, but for purposes of this discussion, it was because they were working together. The men were doing the hunting, the women were doing the nurturing. And even among the hunters, they divided up their work as well. One might be the lookout, and the others spread out and encircled their prey to make it easier to catch. They learned over time that work gets done more quickly when it's spread among a number of people. Another benefit of community in this regard is that not everyone has to be an expert at any task. Our earliest ancestors learned that some were better than others at performing certain tasks. The guy who had the best vision, he should be the lookout. Working together as a community and sharing the load got things done more quickly and usually with better results. And finally, there's always safety in numbers. They were safer when they were together in groups as opposed to being the Lone Ranger. There's also a developmental aspect of our need for community. To put it simply, we're wired that way. Our brains secrete this neurochemical, oxytocin, which tells us that it feels good to be part of a community. Think of how it starts with babies. You're around mom and dad. You feel safe. You feel good. A child is most comfortable when they're with their parents. It continues as we grow. This time of year, we're coming back together as family because that's where it feels good. It feels safe. We feel loved. There's something in that just makes us want to nest, to feel attached to that core unit. There's also a motivational incentive for belonging to community. There's comfort in knowing that someone's got your back. And belonging to a community has psychological benefits. It gives meaning to our lives. When we're part of community, we have something to live for. Belonging to something, being part of a group, gives us a sense of identity in certain ways. It boosts our self-esteem, and it helps us to make sense of the world. When we're in community, we use each other's special strengths, making life better for everyone. I know how to do a lot of things, but there are way more things that I can't do. It's important for me to know my limits and to continue to learn and try to improve myself. But in the meantime, it's nice to know my friends can help me in areas where I'm weak. I'll give you an example. My sister had a stroke, and after it happened, we were sitting around the dining room table, her 3 children and I, trying to figure out how we were going to care for her when she came out of the hospital, and for her husband, who had suffered a stroke 3 years earlier. The house was in disrepair, their finances were a disaster, and now there would be a second set of medical appointments, prescriptions, and therapies to manage. Well, my nephews have amazing carpentry skills. They can build anything. They're strong. My baby nephew, well, he's 42, but he's still my baby nephew. His nickname is Bam Bam because he's strong and he's just so good at doing these kinds of things. So the boys were in charge of the physical plant. They replaced windows, they fixed the leaks, they patched the roof, and they took care of all the mechanical things that came up. My niece, their firstborn, is incredibly comforting. She has the most beautiful soul of anyone I've ever met. She's a great caregiver. So she was in charge of my sister's personal care, making sure she stayed clean and that she ate the right things and that she took all of her prescriptions. She was the one who knew every nurse in the hospital and in the rehab facility and every doctor and kept notes, kind of what was going on. And me, well, I'm an attorney. So needless to say, my job was to sort out the tangled mess that had become their financial lives. My sister never told me how bad anything was, so it was quite a surprise for me. And I'm also hyper organized. She would say that I'm anal retentive. I just call it chaos avoidant. Yeah. So my job was to figure out what was going on. I was opening drawers and finding unopened bills. I was finding tax notices under her sewing machine because she didn't know how she was going to pay them, so she just ignored them. I found check registers or checkbooks where one check had been written and the rest of the book was just cast aside, and there would be like 10 or 11 of them around. I gathered them all together to try to sort this out. And in the meantime, paying the bills, keeping things together, keeping my nephews and my niece in line, making sure my brother-in-law is taken care of, and my other job was to take care of the dog, to make sure that Juice was fed and happy. So I started tackling this pile. I balanced the checkbook, set up a budget. They were doing their work. Within 2 years, I was able to pay off or resolve $60,000 in back taxes and debt. Today, they're debt-free, and they even have a savings account for the first time. The dog's no longer with us, but my brother-in-law and my sister are happy. They are as healthy as they can be. And their household is much more smooth and a lot less chaotic than it had been. But I couldn't have done it all alone. By working together as a family, as a community, we were able to do what needed to be done. Goethe wrote, "The world is so empty if one thinks only of mountains, rivers, and cities. But to know someone who thinks and feels with us, even though distant, is close to us in spirit, this makes the earth for us an inhabited garden." I like that image of the inhabited garden, a place where all species of animals and plants can coexist in community. In this garden, we care for one another and protect one another. That's what you do here in this fellowship. Your new members stated their existence in fundamental sympathy with the principles of this church. They've stated their intention to participate in church affairs and to accept the responsibilities of being a member. This is all part of community. Yes, new members will receive fellowship and experience spiritual growth as a result of joining here, but they also accepted a responsibility by joining. A responsibility to share their time, talent, and treasures. And this mutuality is crucial to community. As John Winthrop said, we must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together. That's what community is all about. According to Jean Vanier, when we're in community with one another, we welcome and help people in a way we couldn't as individuals. When we pool our strength and share the work and responsibility, we can welcome any people, even those in deep distress, and perhaps help them find self-confidence and inner healing. We're all part of many communities. Most of you in the room are members of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks. I'm not. But we're all members of the larger Unitarian Universalist community. You're members of the community where you live, members of the community that you call your family. You might even be part of a particular professional community. For example, I consider myself part of the legal community, the religious professionals community, the social services community, and the black community. I feel that I belong in each of these groups. They're part of my personal identity. And sometimes they overlap. Most of the time they don't. And that's okay. And each of you is a member of multiple communities. And the communities to which you belong are part of your identity as well. And sometimes they overlap, but most of the time they don't. And that's okay too. So I asked you earlier why you joined this particular faith community. Have you thought about it? What does it mean to you to be a member here? As a member of this community, you'll find love, caring, respect, and friendship. Hopefully your soul will be fed and you will continue to grow spiritually while you're here. But remember, it's not all about you and what you get from membership. You have responsibilities too. I'd never joined a church prior to joining my current congregation. I didn't really understand what it meant. And in our congregation, our ceremony involves doing responsive reading number 728 in the gray hymnal. It lays out some of the components of being in community as a church member. And among other things, it mentions those who take seriously the bonds of community, who regularly join in celebration and learn and come as much to minister as to be ministered unto. Those who support the church and its work by their regular, sustained, and generous giving, and who give of themselves. Those who, when asked to serve, do it gladly, who realize that change is brought about through human meeting, who do the work of committees and stay till the end. Those who know that the work of the church is the transformation of society, who have a vision of beloved community transcending the present, and who do not shrink from controversy, sacrifice, or change. Our world right now is struggling with oppression, violence, and discrimination. The current anti-Muslim backlash we're seeing is an example of that struggle. We need strong congregations and strong communities now more than ever. Look at your role in this congregation. Are you participating? Are you helping? Do you give regularly of your time, talent, and treasures? As a Unitarian Universalist congregation, are you working together to encourage one another's spiritual growth? As a peace-loving community, are you working together to curb violence in our society? As a community that respects the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, are you working together to promote tolerance and acceptance and to eliminate discrimination? On our first day together, during water communion, I asked you to step forward and tell us what you bring to community this year. Do you remember what you said? 3 months later, have you done it? If you're doing it, great. That's wonderful. Keep doing it. If you're not, why not? What happened? And is your community suffering because you're not upholding your end of the bargain? It's not too late to recommit to your community, to your collective communities, all of them. Every moment is a new chance to be better and to do better. So start now. Do it today. Your community needs you. Blessed be. Our closing words today are from Robin Gray. As we prepare to depart, we give voice to these hopes. May we know ourselves bound in community even while we are apart. May a passion for justice burn in our lives. May we carry the light of compassion in our hearts and in our every interaction. May we be whole in our devotion to truth and always carry the lamp of peace before us.